What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new quick win. Today we're implementing a very cool small component that is an alphabetic scroll. I recently wanted to use this in one of my applications and all the packages I found were, well, kinda outdated. So I came up with a new solution that works pretty amazing. We're gonna build, first of all, a contact list with a sticky header, which is by itself a pretty nice implementation already. But then we're gonna add this cool component to the side where you got all the letters ABC. You can click on them to jump to a certain group in your list. And as well, because that is quite boring, we're gonna implement a gesture on top of it, so you can just drag your finger through that list of letters and it will automatically jump to the new section where your finger is currently on. You have seen this in most of the contact applications, WhatsApp, standard contact applications. A lot of apps really use this feature. It's something that looks pretty native. I guess for native there's an easy implementation. For us it's not so easy, but we're gonna do this. Code for this quick win available for our Ionic Academy members with a link below, and if you're not yet a member of the Ionic Academy, go check it out right now, ionicacademy.com, my place to help you with everything Ionic. So let's dive into our alphabetic scroll component for today. Alright, so let's get started. We're gonna start with a blank new Ionic application, so just start a new one. You don't need anything else. What we need is loading some dummy data JSON. So I've created this dummy file with entries containing first name and last name. You can just do this and put in random values. And to load that file, we're gonna have to change our tsconfig and add those two properties. So resolve JSON module true and allow synthetic default imports true. Otherwise, your IDE will most likely complain. And we can now head over to the home page and import our data just like this directly from a JSON file. Otherwise, we will have to use the HTTP client with Angular and load that file, but we don't really need to. Because my dummy data is not sorted, I'm gonna put in a little code to sort them by last name, just a simple JavaScript sorting. Now, we wanna iterate that data and display those different groups. So A, all contacts with A, B, all contacts with B. And to achieve this, we could come up with a logic where we check inside the ngFor if a letter is different than the last one and then show a divider, but that's actually kind of complicated. I feel like it's better to create the right kind of data structure up front. So let's do this instead. We're gonna go with this one and iterate the data just like the old school way of iterating. Then we're gonna grab the current contact from this sorted array, and then we're gonna check if, and we should probably keep track of the last one, so let last equals null. If we don't have an entry yet, or if we haven't stored anything, so basically the last letter, then we're gonna set last to the current contact. Last equals contact and using last name and then the first character. So this is basically the last character we encountered. And then we're gonna push a new object, this dot push, of course, this data push, like this. We're gonna use last as the key, so we're gonna have A, B, C as the key. And then we're gonna have an array of users that fit into that category. So all users with a last name starting with A or B. Just a little bit of JavaScript exercise in the beginning, right? And then we can push to our data array at the position this data length -1. At our currently new created users array. So this one is simply accessing this object that we just created, and then we push the new contact into that array. As a result, we're gonna log this out, this data afterwards. So we're gonna see how this works. As well, after the first iteration, last is of course set to, for example, A, and then we're gonna compare at this point if last is unequal to contact.lastname. So in that case, we're going to run the same logic again, basically creating a new section. Okay, promise users is not a function. That's great. This date at which position exactly? Why is this so strange? This is really looking strange. -1. This data length -1. Please. This data push if not last or last is null. Last. What's wrong with you actually? Yeah, it's great. We're writing the first 5 lines and we already got an issue. So that's how it should look. Key A users an empty array. Users, of course, we should push the contact to that one. Now it makes sense. Okay, as a result, we got this nice little one. We don't have all the characters of the alphabet, but that's not a problem. Then we got all the users in each category, and that makes, first of all, creating a list with dividers pretty easy. So that's gonna be our first task right now. Therefore, we head over to our homepage, and we're gonna add a little condense header. That's actually not required, but I think it looks pretty nice. As well, if you do it like this, I just recently noticed that you can have multiple Ion toolbars and it actually looks quite okay. It's not looking very good right now simply because the styling for this isn't added. So I'm gonna add this styling, which makes the search use a flex layout so everything is aligned nicely. We add a bit of margin, padding, background, border radius to the Ion input itself to make it look like in a real search application, and the Ion icon some margin to the left, which gives this nice little effect. Now, in terms of the actual list, that's gonna be interesting now because we're using an Ion item group. And since we have our logic created up front where we've split everything into those groups, we can just go through them. Select item of data, and then we can create an Ion item divider. And this one simply has an Ion label, and that label has item.key, which means we should now have a bunch of dividers with the keys from the alphabet of our users. On top of that, of course, every item group now needs the actual items that fall into that group. And at this point, we can just iterate let user of item.users, which we've created up front. Once again, Ion label. And then user.first name. And usually you see something like this. The user.last name is bold. So we can easily do this. And with that, we have already created our list based on some data. We got this nice condense header effect that is Ionic automatically applying on iOS. Now, the first improvement to this list is we want to make the A or the B sticky to the top. And you might think, we could do this with sticky properties, CSS, something like that. Well, that's so easy. Let's just add sticky to our Ion item divider and let's see what's happening. Oh, we got a sticky header. I just figured this out recently. Sometimes I'm really surprised. There are a lot of cool things in Ionic that you don't know until you need them. So really just add sticky in there and it just works. It's exactly how it should look and behave. Now, this is only the first part. It's actually pretty cool already. So if you want to use a contact list with some search, well, you're done basically. What's the time? 5 minutes? Okay, 7 minutes. Well, that's okay. But now we want to add this alphabetic scroll. And for this, we're going to turn to our CLI and install a few things. So first of all, I'm generating a new module for components. I'm doing this so we can now create a new component that I've called alphabet scroll. Just printing out the commands once again for you. Those are the commands. And I also installed the Ionic, the Capacitor haptics plugin. You will see why in the end. So go ahead and install this. If you're already doing a reload on your live device, you might have to restart this after installing a plugin like that. But that's just a side note. Okay, so we've created that module. Let's head over to that module, shared components module. First of all, we're gonna declare our alphabet scroll component and add it to the array of exports. With that in place, we can already do this same in our home module and import the shared components module so we can use it in a second. Maybe we're gonna put it already in there, might make sense so we can actually see the result of our coding. The name of the component is usually app and then the name, so app alphabet scroll. And I'm just gonna put this, well, let's just put it into the home page at some place. I'm gonna anyway position this in an absolute position, I guess. So let's head over to the alphabet. Yeah. Can we see it already? No, we can't really because, well, we haven't added any logic or anything. So let me bring in the code. What we want to do is basically create a super simple list of elements and then close our unordered list. And we want to do this ng4 let letter of letters. So we want to have all the letters from A to Z in there, and we can do this with a little trick. So we're gonna go to our component and add letters as an empty array, and within the constructor, we're gonna add a bit of logic. I found this somewhere online, really. It's just iterating all the characters and adding them to our letters array. It's really not fancy, but well, it just works. As a result, I guess we will have all the list items here, but they don't have any content. We definitely want to make them tappable, I think. And on click of each letter, we also want to go to a specific letter. We're going to have to take care of that in a second. Let's for now just add the function in here, and then we will handle it later. Now, I'm going to use an A-link simply because I found a little logic that also contained this setup, and I found that actually worked quite good. So on top of that, so we're gonna have all the letters here. We definitely need some CSS for that, but that's not gonna be a problem. But on top of that, we for sure need a bit of styling. So let's call this one letter sidebar. And let's also use a template reference as we wanna apply a gesture later on. Perhaps we should now move to the CSS because having the list at the bottom isn't really what we want. So maybe we can do it right in here. Let's grab this, or let's save this first, and then we can see the letter sidebar. There we go. This is our component. This is the letter sidebar. We want to give it the position fixed, so it disappears. That's great. Then let's give it a value of top 25%. As you can see, it's not visible right now, so putting this to a value of 2 should be enough. We want to move it to the right hand side, so we give it a value of 0, and then it's positioned already quite nice, I think. So let's do this. This was the letter sidebar. I kind of tend to write my CSS like this, so doing it in the browser and then copying it to the actual file, I feel like that usually goes a lot faster than trying something in here, refreshing and doing all of this all the time. So now we're gonna have to put a bit of styling to our elements. First of all, we want to use for the li item. Let's use what's it called? List style none. That removes this ugly whatever. We're gonna give it a bit more width, and we want to align the text to the center and perhaps a bit bigger font weight. Let's say 500. That should already look good. So we're gonna put all of this to our li item. And finally to the A, we're gonna put a bit bigger font size as well. So something like this or a bit smaller. I think that looks okay. But what's not okay is we see the index is still behind our items. So I guess, yeah, we really need to use 100. Okay, no problem. So the ion item divider seems to have an index of 99. Is that right? Is that really true? Ion item divider. index. It has 100 as well, interesting, but still with 100 we are fine here. Okay, we have positioned this first of all in the right place. Now it becomes a bit more challenging as we want to add the click event to go to a certain letter, and also this with a finger scrolling on it. So I can quickly show you already the preview on a device as well. Here's my device and it looks quite nice, I think. I definitely want to touch them and go through all of the letters. So that's what we're going to do. Maybe we're going to start with go to letter. We will also keep track of the last open value, so the last letter we selected. And if this last open is equal to the letter, we can simply return, because in that case we don't need to jump or reload anything. Otherwise, we can set our last open to the letter that we just selected. And then we're gonna use an event emitter, because from this list, we don't really have access to the item list here. So we need a bit of communication between the child component, which is the alphabet scroll, and the parent, which is our home page. Therefore, let's add a new output here. And we're gonna call this letter selected. Letter selected, new event emitter, and we're gonna use actually of the type string, I guess, since we're emitting a new letter. Therefore, we can now say this letter selected, emit a new value, the letter we just selected. Now the parent just needs to implement or listen to that function and do something once we've selected a letter. On top of that, we will also add a second output, because well, we wait for a second. We wait. Let's just do the letter implementation first, maybe. So letter selected can now be implemented in our homepage on the component. Letter selected, in that case, we should scroll to a specific letter. We haven't used the function yet, so let's implement it here in our view. Letter. Letter. There we go. Now, this is a bit more challenging maybe, because we need to iterate the data and find the right element that we want to scroll into the view. So we can start again with our super simple iteration of our data. Then we have to figure out which group is selected, and then we have to move it into the view. Why am I not iterating the groups? I guess because I need the index. Yeah, that could be the case. Okay, this is first of all the group. The group has a key and the users. And if the group dot key is equal to our letter, in that case, we want to access that group and scroll it into our view. What am I doing in my code here? I really don't understand what I did up front. Is it too early for me, or is this just plain a bad idea? Item groups? Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I really just had to think about this. The problem at this point is we have found the right group technically in our data, but we haven't found the right view element. So we don't know which item group we actually need. So what we need is to access all item groups first of all. And we can do this by using add view children. We're gonna just select all Ion item group elements, and we want to read their element reference. We don't want to have the shadow DOM element that's implemented by Ionic, because that's not going to be helpful. We really want to have the plain HTML DOM element. So this will give us a list of all the items, of all the Ion item groups. So one section like this is an item group, and this is an item group, and this is an item group. And therefore, that's also the reason why we use the index here. So now we can get the right item group by using this dot item groups filter. Can we do filter? Yeah, we don't need to convert it to an array. That's cool. Element index, and then we're filtering out if the index is equal to the value of our iteration. So if the letter is in the first group, well, then it's also the first group of the viewChildren group. If we found a group, in that case, we can grab the element, which is the group at position 0, because filter always returns an array. Maybe we should check if group and group.length bigger than 0. That might be a nice catch here. So then we finally got the native element, and then we can use element, native element, scroll into view. That's a basic JavaScript function to scroll something into our view. At this point, I think we can just finish. Can we just, yeah, let's just put a return in here. Could be maybe optimized a bit more, but that should be fine. Let's give it a try. Let's jump to H, let's jump to N, and it just works. Mostly, if I hit the right letter. Okay, we of course can't scroll T or W to the top because it's already at the end of the list. But for everything else, we can already click it. But of course, we now want to have this effect where we put our finger on the screen and move it across this alphabet, and it then jumps to the other categories. So what we need to do for this is go back to our component and implement a gesture. And this gesture is going to be a bit more complicated. We need to implement the after view init, so we can actually get rid of ng on init and change it to ng after view init instead, and set up a gesture. We also need the gesture controller from Ionic, so let's import it. Gesture controller. I feel like I have a typo. Gesture controller from Ionic Angular. There we go. Now let's define our move gesture on the items. We can come on, really, I need more coffee today. This the gesture controller create, and before we pass in the configuration, let's do one thing, and that is move gesture enable, because I really tend to forget about this, and yeah, that's always horrible. You're debugging for like 10 minutes, so why is my gesture not working? And it's simply because you haven't enabled it. Now, yeah, we need the view child. I think we defined this already exactly. So let's put in a view child for our sidebar element. This one, and then we can apply the gesture to our sidebar. We only want to catch events in the y direction, so up and down. We don't really want left and right. We want to use a threshold of 0, so it starts immediately, and the gesture name doesn't really matter too much. On start, that's more interesting, because, well, we will handle this in a second. On move, we definitely want to do something on move, and on end, we will most likely do something as well. Now, this is the gesture basic setup for adding a new gesture. Now, I found a pretty cool code that tries to figure out the closest element. So on move, we're gonna try and get the closest element by using the current x and y values of our touch events by using element from point. Now, if our element, our closest element, has an li and an a tag within. So if the index of that search is bigger than -1, we have found something. And once again, I haven't come up with that logic. I found it inside a deprecated component called alpha scroll. So really want to give credit to that one that existed in the past but didn't really work anymore. I think at some point they had this logic, I don't know where, but yeah, right here. Closest element, they use the hammer gesture recognizer, which we're not using anymore, but that's where it came from. So I'm just gonna bring the whole part now in. So if we have the closest element, we're gonna grab the text, which is the letter itself, A, B, C, whatever. And now my additional check, if the letter is not equal to the last item, we're gonna use the Capacitor haptics plugin to trigger a little haptic feedback. I've seen this in other applications as well. When you go through that list, it's always nice to give the user a little bit of feedback that the user can actually feel. And I think that worked pretty well. So that's the whole reason why we installed the haptics plugin in the beginning. Now, of course, we can now also easily call our goToLetter function, and basically let's give this a try. Now, as a result, you see it kind of works. I kind of get feedback, but the view is also scrolling. And I really don't want to scroll my Ion content while I use this alphabetic search. Can I actually try this in the browser as well? Let's see. Not as good as on a device. So what we do to fix this is simply adding another output, and we're gonna call this one scrolling letter. That's gonna be a new event emitter of the type Boolean, and we're just gonna emit if we're currently scrolling or if we're not scrolling. So on start of the gesture, we're gonna add scrolling emit letter true. On end, we're gonna emit false. And now we just need to catch this event, the scrolling letter event, on our component as well. So let's put it in here, scrolling letter. And then we can come up with a new function, whatever, letter scroll active, passing the event that we get from our component. So let's add this. And then we should also keep track of this. So let's add another property, scroll false. And within letter scroll active, we will simply set active. Come on, that's not a hard word, Simon. Oh, that was interesting import. This dot scroll equals active. That means if we're starting our gesture, scroll will become true in our homepage. If we end the gesture, it will become false. And we can now use this to our advantage by setting scroll Y on our Ion content to not scroll. So if we're using the alphabetic search, we want to disable Ion content scroll. And as a result, I can still easily scroll this just like before. But at the same time, once I start to use this at the side, the Ion content won't scroll anymore. I get this nice little haptic feedback. It feels basically exactly like a native contact application like WhatsApp or just the Contacts app. Once I stop, I can again use this. We got the sticky headers, we got the alphabetic scroll component in place, we got the haptic feedback for this. You of course have to run it on a device. If we're using it here, navigator vibrate. Of course, my iMac can't vibrate. That would be kind of strange. But you see, it's working nicely. It's working even better on a device. And we have finished our cool list with haptic feedback and alphabetic scroll. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick one. It was actually longer than I expected because setting up the custom component with all the gesture stuff and the logic involved was kind of complicated. Once again, I got a bit of code for this from a previous package called, what's its name? Ionic 2 Alpha Scroll. Maybe it's going to be updated in the future based on this code. Feel free to use it because I feel like having a component like this is really important for the Ionic community, and otherwise I just hope it will help in your applications with a contact list or any kind of list where you quickly want to jump to a group. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and of course, once again, check out the Ionic Academy, which hosts this quick win. I will hopefully catch you next week again, so happy coding, Simon.